Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning. Thank you, Mary Lou, for those very kind words and for your service to the Justice Department and for the extraordinary leadership that you and Assistant Attorney General Lori Robinson are providing to the Office of Justice Programs. You and your team have been doing a great job in bringing so many critical partners together for this symposium. It is a privilege for me. It really is a privilege to join with top federal officials, members of the bench and the bar, federal, state, and local law enforcement and corrections officers, jail and prison administrators, victims, prosecutors, former defendants, and advocacy organizations as we examine, discuss, and ultimately work to improve the state of pretrial justice in America. Your insights and your expertise are essential to this work, and I want to thank each of you, especially Tim Murray, my old colleague, Judge Truman, it says here, Judge Truman Morrison, that would be Tim Morrison, and their colleagues at the Pretrial Justice Institute for your participation. I also want to recognize Judge Eric Washington, I see over here, a young AUSA who I think I swore in, as Mary Lou indicated, who's now the U.S. Attorney in Virginia. Tim Hafey, good to see you. And I can't see without these other lights, so if I've missed anybody who has been significant in my life, I apologize for that. And Sharon, honey, if you're here, I'm sorry I missed you. But like Tim and like Judge Morrison, many of you have been on the front lines of efforts to strengthen and to reform the pretrial process for decades. And your work has helped to ensure fairness, efficiency, and public safety. But as you all have discussed this morning, we still have much more to do. This symposium marks an important step forward in what I know and what I pledge will be an ongoing conversation about how we can achieve safe and fair pretrial release and diversion practices in our communities, and in so doing, make our justice system both more effective and more efficient. Now, as extraordinary as this gathering is, it's important to note that it is hardly unprecedented. Nearly half a century ago, our nation's 64th Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, launched the national dialogue that we are extending today when he convened the first ever national conference on bail and criminal justice right here in Washington. Now, that landmark gathering helped to raise awareness about the need for pretrial justice reform and to usher in a wave of meaningful changes, most notably the Federal Bail Reform Act of 1966, which constituted the first major restructuring of the federal system since the year George Washington was sworn in as president. Before Robert Kennedy's historic conference, there was really limited understanding about the cost and public safety benefits of allowing for the release of defendants on their own recognizance pending trial. And few states had established such policies. But soon after Attorney General Kennedy helped to shine a light on this issue, there was a flurry of activity in state legislatures nationwide as proposals were formulated, considered, and ultimately implemented. By 1999, in one form or another, virtually every state had put these policies into effect. Now, policymakers, law enforcement officers, and judges across the country helped to design appropriate procedures to detain without bail those defendants who were deemed too dangerous for release or who posed a flight risk, while at the same time safeguarding due process and civil rights. Today, after decades of study, analysis, and cooperation, there's no doubt that compared to Attorney General Kennedy's time, current pretrial release and diversion programs are not only more effective, they are more just. And yet, serious problems as well as significant inefficiencies remain. As we speak, close to 750,000 people reside in America's jail system. When they are sent home or sentenced to prison, they will cycle out, and others will cycle in, so that by the end of the year, 10 million individuals will have been involved in nearly 13 million jail admissions and releases. Across the country, nearly 2/3 of all inmates who crowd our county jails at an annual cost of roughly $9 billion taxpayer dollars are defendants awaiting trial. 2/3 of all inmates are awaiting trial. Now, many of these individuals are nonviolent, non-felony offenders, charged with crimes ranging from petty theft to public drug use. And a disproportionate number of them are poor. They are forced to remain in custody for an average of 2 weeks and at a considerable expense to taxpayers because they simply cannot afford to post the bail required, very often just a few $100s, to return home until their day in court arrives. This link between financial means and jail time is troubling in its own right, but it's compounded by the fact that many inmates become ineligible for health benefits while they're in jail, imposing an additional burden on taxpayers when they are released, and often are forced to rely on emergency rooms for even the most routine medical treatments. Now, the reality is that it doesn't have to be this way. Almost all of these individuals can be released and supervised in their communities and allowed to pursue or maintain employment and participate in educational opportunities and their normal family lives without any risk of endangering their fellow citizens or fleeing from justice. Studies have clearly shown that almost all of them could reap greater benefits from appropriate pretrial treatment or rehabilitation programs than from time in jail, and might, as a result, be less likely to end up serving long prison sentences. But within the confines of the current system, we too often find ourselves with few, if any, viable alternatives to incarceration. And this is where today's conversation begins, and that's why this symposium is so vitally important. By competently assessing risk of release, weighing community safety alongside relevant court considerations, and engaging with pretrial service providers in private agencies, as well as in courts, probation departments, and sheriff's offices, we can design reforms to make the current system more equitable while balancing the concerns of judges, prosecutors, defendants, and advocacy organizations. We can help those serving on the bench make informed decisions that improve cost effectiveness and preserve safety needs as well as due process. And we can spark, as Robert Kennedy did, not only a vital discussion, but unprecedented progress. Now, I'm proud to report that already the Department of Justice is working to support pretrial services and evidence-based decision-making in jurisdictions across the country. Together with our partners at the Pretrial Justice Institute and the National Association of Counties, we are providing guidance to elected officials at the local level and soliciting perspectives from experienced pretrial management professionals. We are examining new ways to ensure that risk assessment is an integral part of the conversation. And to that end, we've published a report based on the research and recommendations of experts from across the country on how to improve our capabilities and manage defendant risk when it comes to detention and release decisions. At the same time, we are working to improve reentry policies so we can have an impact on both ends of the process, from pretrial justice to the smooth reintegration of those we release from custody. In January, I chaired the first meeting of the Interagency Reentry Council, composed of seven cabinet members and other top administration officials, which last year awarded almost $100 million under the Second Chance Act to support substance abuse treatment, employment assistance, housing, mentoring, and other reentry services. In total, we now support some 250 reentry programs and have launched rigorous evaluations to measure the degree to which they reduce recidivism. Now, there is no reason why we can't or shouldn't adopt a similarly broad-based approach to the pretrial justice system. But with federal, state, and municipal resources in high demand and in short supply, the simple truth is that government can't solve these problems alone. We need to engage key partners and innovators across the country to guide our efforts, to bring an expanded network of stakeholders to the table, and to push for responsible reform. So, to be blunt, we need your expertise, we need your ideas, and we need your help. Our discussions must be grounded in rational and transparent risk assessments, built on evidence-based tools and predicated on the presumption of innocence, but ever mindful of the need to keep our neighborhoods safe. Now, each of you can play a key role in this effort. You can help us find ways to support the growth of pretrial service agencies and diversion programs in the more than 300 jurisdictions where they already exist, and encourage their creation where they do not. You can fight to ensure that for every defendant who enters the system, our judges have access to the best information possible, along with a range of supervision and service options, as well as sound guidelines to inform their decisions. And you can broaden our engagement with other experts on the ground, raising the profile of this work and igniting, once again, a movement for meaningful change. The call for such a movement was first issued nearly half a century ago, at the very first gathering of this kind when Robert Kennedy challenged this nation, and I quote, "To see it that for the poor man, the word law does not mean an enemy, a technicality, and obstruction. Let us see to it that law for all men means justice," unquote. This is the mission, the legacy, and the cause that we now must carry forward. So as we rededicate ourselves to this work, I can't help but feel optimistic about where we will arrive and what we will achieve, but only if we do so together. Not only do I look forward to hearing about the discussions that you will have and the recommendations that you will develop during this symposium, I look forward to our continued partnership, our continued progress, and our continued pursuit of security, opportunity, and most importantly, justice for all. Thank you.